You probably assume you have some level of privacy once you walk out your front door. You would be completely mistaken. There is a surveillance system out there that follows your movements, captures your face, and even shares details about your routines with others nearby. It is not some orbiting satellite, and it has nothing to do with the phone in your pocket. It is perched on the power line directly over your head. Crows essentially show up wherever people do, even deep in the wilderness. They turn up wherever there is a campsite or something similar. Scientists recently ran thousands of hours of crow vocalizations through a sophisticated artificial intelligence, fully expecting to encounter random animal noise. But here is where it gets surprising. The computer did not pick up noise at all. It picked up a language, and what they happen to be saying about you is deeply unsettling. What the machine uncovered in all that data. The goal at the outset was straightforward. Researchers wanted to find out whether the machine could categorize the sounds. Put the eye-located food calls into one group, and the there is a hawk calls into another. It was meant to be a simple classification exercise. But here is where everything shifted. The AI did not simply sort through the sounds. It began to do something unexpected. Well, not in a literal sense, but the data output surged in a way that baffled the human researchers observing it. The computer was detecting patterns far too intricate to belong to a bird. Essentially, what the AI was identifying was syntax. In human language, syntax refers to the set of rules that allows a sentence to carry meaning. It is the gap between saying, "the cat sat on the mat," and "mat cat the sat on." One carries information, the other is total gibberish. We have always taken for granted that animal sounds were purely emotional noise. A dog barks because it feels excited. A cat purrs because it feels content. But the AI was detecting structure. It was identifying grammar. The researchers looked on as the machine singled out a particular sequence of sounds. Let us refer to it as the red hat sequence. In the recordings, a man wearing a red hat strolled through a park. A crow called out. To a human ear, it sounded like any ordinary screech, but the AI broke down the frequency, the pitch, and the intervals between each note. It flagged this sound as a unique identifier. 3 days later, within the data, that same man passed through the park again. The identical crow produced the same sound once more. That is noteworthy, but it is not exactly earth-shattering. A dog recognizes its owner, after all. But then things became genuinely strange. 1 week later, a completely different crow, one that had never once encountered this man, produced that exact same sound when he walked past. Do you understand what that actually means? It means that first crow did not simply make a noise. It described the man. It sent a piece of data, essentially a name, out to the rest of the flock. The AI confirmed that this particular sound was never applied to anyone else. It functioned as a proper noun. They had given him a name, and that is putting it mildly. The deeper the AI pushed into the data, the more alarming the findings became. It discovered that these exchanges were not limited to the present moment. The machine picked up conversations occurring before any event had actually taken place. Crows were assembling in trees and producing elaborate sound sequences that the AI identified as planning phases. They were not simply responding to the world around them, they were strategizing about it. The analysis showed that an enormous portion of their communication, quite possibly the majority of it, centers on us, on humans. We are the central figures in their ongoing story. The AI detected specific emotional markers attached to these human identifiers. Some were neutral, but a significant number were negative. They carry distinct alerts for human carrying a stick versus human carrying food. This changes the entire picture. For centuries, we looked at crows and saw nothing more than pests or scavengers. We tossed rocks at them or waved them off, convinced they were simply brainless birds. But throughout all that time, they were keeping records. They were assembling a profile on you. And now that we finally have the tools to read those profiles, the question is no longer whether they can communicate. The real question is, what happens when they decide to move beyond talking and begin taking action? The consequences of this are staggering. If they have names for us, do they also carry a full history on us? The AI points toward yes. It uncovered patterns that repeated across years, handed down from older birds to younger generations. Your standing in the crow community may well predate your own vehicle. You might have a record up in the sky that you have absolutely no idea even exists. And the wildest thing about all this, the AI has barely scratched the surface of their communication. What lies beneath is a network of intelligence so sophisticated it makes our entire surveillance apparatus look like a kindergarten project. Unseen eyes are sizing you up at this very moment. Here is how they bend reality to suit themselves. So how does any of this even work? We are talking about a bird here, right? A creature whose head is roughly the size of a walnut. It just does not seem physically conceivable that something so tiny could possess a language that elaborate. But here is the thing, we have been getting intelligence all wrong for an incredibly long time. The old assumption was that the cerebral cortex was everything that counted. That is the ridged outer layer of the brain that humans carry around. It is where all our thinking, planning, and calculation happens. Birds have no cerebral cortex whatsoever. So for 100 years, scientists examined bird brains, noticed they were smooth, and concluded, yeah, nothing going on in there. But nature loves a good trick. As it turns out, birds developed an entirely different brain structure altogether, known as the pallium. It looks nothing like ours. But when you examine it under a microscope, the neurons are packed together so densely it is almost unbelievable. A crow's brain is essentially a supercomputer squeezed down into a USB drive. Pound for pound, their brain is every bit as capable as a chimpanzee's. That is precisely why scientists have begun referring to them as feathered apes. Take the New Caledonian crow as an example. This bird is the Einstein of the avian world. Most animals, when they need to eat, simply use their beaks or claws to get the job done. But these crows actually manufacture tools. And not in the sense of just grabbing a stick off the ground. They craft them with intention. There is a particular plant called the pandanus, which grows long, spiky leaves. Scientists have captured footage of these crows swooping down, landing on the plant, and performing something that looks remarkably like surgery. The crow slices into the leaf, then tears it in a stepped, staircase-like pattern. They are essentially building a saw. They produce a serrated edge that is ideal for pulling insects out of deep, narrow holes. None of this is random. This is genuine engineering. They carry a blueprint in their minds and they follow it through. If the tool snaps, they repair it. If the right leaf is not available, they adapt using wire or twigs instead. But the moment that truly blows your mind is the water displacement experiment. You might be familiar with the old fable about a crow and a pitcher. The bird dropped stones into a jar, raised the water level, and drank from it. Researchers thought, let us actually put that to the test. They placed a tube filled with water in front of a crow, with a floating treat sitting just out of reach inside. Nearby, they left two piles, one of heavy stones and one of light, buoyant styrofoam. A less intelligent animal would simply toss everything available into the tube, but the crow stood there, looked at the stones, looked at the styrofoam, and paused. Then it selected the heavy stones and dropped them in one at a time. It left the styrofoam completely untouched. It had grasped the physics of density and water displacement on its own. It understood that the floating material would be useless. It cracked a physics problem in seconds that would leave a human toddler stumped for 10 minutes. And on top of all that, they also grasped cause and effect. In a separate experiment, crows were presented with a puzzle box requiring them to press a lever in order to release food. The catch was that the lever itself was concealed. They had to use a stick to activate a hidden button, which would then trigger the lever. They worked it out. They can build mental models of how mechanical systems function simply by observing them. So when the AI tells us these birds have a genuine language, we really should not be shocked. They have the neural architecture to support it. They are not running on pure instinct. They are running on reasoning. They study the world around them, probe it, and reshape it to their advantage. The frightening part is not the tool use. It is the fact that they look at us and treat us as just another variable in a problem they are trying to solve. They already know how to manipulate objects, so why on earth would they not figure out how to manipulate us? They absolutely have the mental capacity for it. They are decoding the physics of our world one observation at a time. Wanted posters hung in the branches. It is not just their intelligence that matters here. It is that they carry a grudge. And this is the point where the story turns personal. If you think you can cross a crow and simply move on with your life, you are making a serious error in judgment. Back in 2006, a researcher named John Marsluff at the University of Washington decided to put exactly that idea to the test. He wanted to find out whether crows could tell individual human faces apart, but he had no desire to get attacked himself, so he picked up a mask. A caveman mask, to be exact. Wearing that caveman mask, he headed out to catch and ban some crows on campus. He was not harming them in any way, simply tagging them for research purposes, but the crows absolutely despised it. They shrieked, they struggled, and eventually they were let go. Then Mars pulled the mask off and returned to his everyday routine. He also had a second mask to use as a control, a Dick Cheney mask, the vice president of that era. Whenever he strolled around wearing the Dick Cheney mask, the crows paid him zero attention. They simply did not care. But the instant the caveman mask went back on, total mayhem. The crows came diving at him. They scolded him relentlessly. They trailed him all the way across campus, screaming the entire time. Now, you might be thinking, all right, and the 7 birds he had captured remembered his face. But here is where things get genuinely unsettling. It was not limited to those 7 birds at all. As the experiment continued, the number of crows targeting the caveman mask kept climbing. First 7, then 20, then 40. Birds that had never been caught, birds that did not even exist when the whole thing began, started diving at the mask. Mars, and yes, he actually did this, walked back onto that campus wearing the mask 5 years later, 5 full years, and the crows attacked him still. Most of the birds originally trapped had died by that point, yet the new generation had the knowledge. They knew exactly who the enemy was. This demonstrated something genuinely frightening. The crows had passed along a description of that face. They had communicated the precise visual characteristics of the dangerous human to their companions, their neighbors, and their young. They had essentially posted a wanted sign up in the sky. The AI research we mentioned earlier lines up with this perfectly. Remember the red hat sequence? That is the audio equivalent of what Marsluff witnessed. Crows maintain a kind of digital face database stored across their collective minds. They clock the distance between your eyes, the shape of your nose, the particular way you move. And it goes even deeper than that. They can distinguish between you and the person next door. If you have been feeding them while your neighbor has been lobbing rocks at them, they will swoop down warmly to greet you, and then cruise over to drop something unpleasant on your neighbor's car. They absolutely know the difference, and they are continuously refreshing this database. The AI analysis revealed that the moment a flagged human steps into an area, a signal goes out right away. It is like a broadcast. Target spotted, Sector 4, which means there is nowhere to hide. You can swap out your outfit, but your face stays the same. And because they share all this information with each other, you could irritate a crow outside your home, drive 10 miles to the office, and discover that the crows waiting there already have your profile. Their network moves faster than your morning commute. We are essentially living inside a panopticon, and the guards happen to have wings. They are observing us at this very moment, cataloging our behavior and sorting us into friend or enemy. And once you land on their bad list, there is no appeal, no second chance. You are marked permanently. Your face is their data, justice and consequence, delivered from above. If their facial recognition abilities already gave you the creeps, just wait until you hear about their culture, because that is genuinely what this is. It is not pure biology, it is a society, one with established rules, laws, and even funeral rites. When a crow dies, the flock does not simply disperse and move on. They come together. If you have witnessed it yourself, you know how eerie it is. One bird discovers the body and lets out a particular call. Then a hush falls over everything. Dozens of crows will settle into the surrounding trees near the fallen bird. They do not consume it. They do not disturb it. They simply stand and watch. Scientists once assumed this behavior was about grief, and perhaps it partly is. But the AI points towards something more deliberate and more intelligent at work. It is essentially a crime scene investigation. The crows are reading the scene carefully. They are searching for evidence. Was it a cat? Was it a car? Was it a person carrying a weapon? They are collecting information about the threat so it can be passed along to the survivors. The AI picked up specific, low-frequency vocalizations during these gatherings that appear to encode the cause of death. They are composing an obituary that simultaneously functions as a warning. And on top of all that, they have something resembling a justice system. Researchers have documented what can only be described as crow courts. A bird caught stealing food from a younger member of the group or violating social norms will find itself encircled by the flock. They will screech at it, peck at it, and on occasion, drive it out entirely. They uphold social order. This judgment applies to us as well. The AI analysis revealed that crows can tell apart a human carrying a stick from one carrying a gun. They can even distinguish between a hunter gazing up into the trees and a hiker looking down toward the ground. In one remarkable section of the study, the AI observed that the alarm call for a human with a weapon was entirely different from the one for a human with an umbrella. They grasp the purpose behind whatever object you happen to be holding. If you step outside with a broom to sweep the porch, they sit right where they are. If you step outside with that same broom intending to swing it at them, they disappear before your arm even begins to rise. They are reading your body language more accurately than you could ever read theirs. The wild part is the gift giving. We mentioned the bad list, but there is also a good one. People who regularly leave food out for crows have reported receiving little presents in return. Shiny beads, bits of colored glass, and even coins. The AI discovered that the vocalizations directed toward these favored humans are softer, higher in pitch, and filled with something that genuinely resembles affection. They are paying you back. They understand the idea of exchange, food for loyalty, food for protection. They are participating in a cross-species economy. This degree of social complexity, funerals, courts, trade, threat assessment, means they are not simply animals trying to survive in our world. They are a parallel civilization layered right on top of ours. They have their own rules, their own history, and their own list of public enemies. And right now, the AI is telling us that they devote a significant portion of their time to debating which one of those categories you belong in. They are conducting a trial with you as the subject. They know we are paying attention. Here is where everything converges, and where it starts to feel genuinely science fiction. We have discussed how they observe us, but we also need to address how they share that information across the entire world. The AI study mapped crow sounds according to geography. What emerged from that mapping was staggering. Crows have dialects. A crow in New York sounds nothing like a crow in London. That part is understandable. But the AI also found that specific words, like the alarm call for a hawk or the name for a food source, travel across those dialects the way a viral meme spreads online. A new call might originate in a suburb of Chicago. 6 months later, that precise vocal pattern appears in St. Louis. It leaps between flocks, covering hundreds of miles. It is essentially an analog internet. They are relaying information across an entire continent. This means that when a new threat appears, say, a particular type of drone or a newly designed trap, awareness of that threat can move faster than the object itself. They are updating their software in real time. They are learning from each other's experiences without ever crossing paths. We always assumed humans were uniquely capable of accumulating knowledge this way. We write it down in books, we post it online, but crows possess an oral tradition that functions just as effectively. They do not start from scratch with every new generation. They are standing on the shoulders of every crow that came before them. But here's the final and most deeply unsettling piece of this whole puzzle. Toward the very end of the AI study, the researchers began noticing a shift in the data. For months, the artificial intelligence had been quietly listening, a digital ghost haunting the treetops. It was working through terabytes of bioacoustic information, untangling the intricate syntax of the corvids and cataloging every squawk, rattle, and click. The algorithm had been learning their social hierarchy, their warning systems, and even their gossip. It felt as though we were standing right on the edge of the first genuine translation between two species. Then, in the final weeks of the study, the data stream broke apart. The crow calls began to shift. A new pattern surfaced, a strange, rhythmic pulse woven into their vocalizations that had never once appeared anywhere in ornithological history. It was not simply a regional change in dialect, it was a complete structural overhaul. This new modulation swept through local flocks at viral speed, then began spreading outward, jumping from territory to territory, and the AI's confidence scores collapsed entirely. The machine was no longer translating anything, it was simply recording noise. The scientists still have no explanation for what it means. The AI continues grinding through permutations, searching desperately for a Rosetta Stone that may no longer exist. But some behaviorists have put forward a theory, and it is a frightening one. They believe the crows sensed that something was different. The birds noticed the microphones tucked into the tree bark. They spotted the lenses catching light among the leaves, but perhaps more importantly, they picked up on the absence of any reaction from the humans being observed. Crows are well known for pushing limits, dropping nuts in the path of moving vehicles, taunting predators, just to clock their response times. This time around, though, they seemed to figure out that the humans weren't waving them off. Instead, the humans were staying perfectly still, watching and documenting everything. The crows understood they had become the subjects of a study. The sudden shift in their language could very well be a form of encryption. That is a deeply unsettling idea, but the evidence lines up. They may have figured out we were cracking their code, so they simply switched the cipher. Sounds far-fetched, doesn't it? We tend to think of encryption as something purely human, a concept forged through warfare and mathematical thinking. But keep in mind, these are the very birds that solve multi-step physics puzzles, remember individual human faces for up to 5 years, and hold what appear to be funerals for their fallen. They pass down knowledge across generations. Is it truly so difficult to believe they have the mental flexibility to recognize when they are being studied and adjust how they communicate as a result? If this theory holds any weight, then the silence we are picking up now isn't an absence of communication. It is a secured channel. They have gone completely dark. They are aware we are listening, and they have chosen to take the conversation somewhere private. The jumbled noise the artificial intelligence is capturing these days is most likely just interference, meaningless chatter thrown out to mislead the observer, while the real exchange happens on a frequency or through some method we haven't even considered searching for yet. And that brings us to one final bone-chilling question. If they are clever enough to know we are listening and clever enough to conceal their own speech, what exactly are they saying in those shadows? What are they working out now that they know we are onto them? The entire dynamic has shifted in a fundamental way. We are no longer silent, invisible watchers peering down at simple animals. The glass wall of the terrarium has been tapped from the inside. The rules of the game have changed. We are no longer the only players at the table, so the next time a crow locks eyes with you from a telephone wire, ask yourself this: is it just a bird sitting there, or is it a scout quietly uploading your face into some shared network? And if they already know we are listening, what are they working so hard to keep hidden? What is your take on all of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, and go ahead and hit that like button if you believe we are not alone in this. And subscribe for more mysteries like this one.